Good morning, afternoon. So a friend of mine asked me why I make these videos because it's a pet peeve for him that people make such videos. Not the Facebook Live thing, but the like, oh, I went on this retreat and it's amazing and I gotta tell you all about it. Hi, John. I like the live thing as opposed to just making a video and posting it because there's a feeling of some interaction. Like I can be talking and you can be like, what's that mean? Tell me more about it. And as opposed, and one of the reasons I'm doing this as opposed to my writing is that it's again, there's this feeling of interaction that gives me a chance to, obviously I've been in isolation to a certain degree for 3 months, around 100 people and not interacting. So I've been thinking over the last few days of what other things I wanted to talk about. Thank you. I want to speak more about silence and what that means, and generosity, and layers of that, and sensual desire and pleasure. Thank you. It could just be chatting. It could just be this weird, like me talking, and you guys just sending me messages and me responding. And I also wanted to talk about how interesting it is to live in a scent-free environment. So I may not talk about all that right now because I feel more like talking about more immediate experience, which is kind of what hi Steve, what the practice I've been doing is. And again, by expressing the experience I'm having, which is a big way of how I experience life, is expressing it either through talking to friends or writing or taking photos or whatever. That's kind of how I live, how I experience, how I digest and process. So I left the retreat center on Tuesday, and today is Thursday. It's just a couple days ago. And at the retreat center, I was sitting an hour every morning and occasionally throughout the day. Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you, Lorenzo. And so since I've been here, I've been sitting an hour every morning. And I would really like to sit more than that. And it's very strange to interact with people and keep up normal human interaction while trying to be acutely aware of the minutiae of what the consciousness is experiencing and how it's affecting the consciousness. I've been staying with the friend I stayed with at the retreat center. We've known each other now for 6 months or something. Knowing, the process of knowing. And one of the things that was so nice was just coming out of this retreat and being able to be sensual in a friendly way. Nothing overly intense, although, my neurosis came up a bit for conversations and picking apart things in conversations. But there was an easy, just comfortable, pleasurable, physical togetherness that manifested in different ways. It's that feeling like if you're in a town where you don't know anybody and you don't have that, or even if you are in a town where you know people and you don't have that, like your friends are away or they're busy and you feel isolated, it's a very, it's really irritating and uncomfortable if you want to connect with someone. If you make peace with not wanting to connect with someone, that's a different story. Because I had committed to 3 months of not connecting with people, not talking, not touching, not looking at, every time wanting someone came up, it was irritating because I had committed to not doing it. And the Buddhists would, thank you, Joe, the Buddhists would argue that wanting anything is irritating and painful. That there's always this feeling of lack, and that causes an irritation, and it causes division in the consciousness, which is irritating, because it's harder to be with what's actually happening when you're projecting into a fantasy future past, sideways, lateral, what if I thing. So I was trying to placate the sensual desire in the retreat by doing what filled me with joy physically that didn't involve other people, which doesn't just mean masturbating. Um, because I was trying to not do that as well. There was like this commitment to non-erotic behavior, which you may imagine is difficult for me, but um, again, once you commit to it, it kind of it immediately just kind of becomes less important. However, the physical conditioning, the habits, that became weird. Like 2 weeks of not touching oneself, it made every single movement be like, I just want to touch my dick. So that became frustrating. But I spent a lot of time, especially during the first 6 weeks, doing a lot of yoga. Hi, Dusty Dust. I love you. Hi, Lance. Good morning. So I did like a lot of asana practice, a lot of really intense qigong practice. I brought some books with me, and I was doing some research and some study. It got distracting because trying to just be still is not very easy for me. This retreat center incorporates movement, walking, with sitting, because you try to learn how to carry that mindfulness, which is what I eventually want to get into. Well, Lance, who knows if you couldn't do it? Maybe in a week you could do it. It's amazing what we can do if we just do it. You don't know you can't do it until you try. The friend I'm staying with, he's gone on silent Christian retreats. He's Episcopalian, and he's like, oh, I hate eating in silence. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like eating in silence. You can focus on your food more. It was actually very satisfying, the silence, to be around people and not have to interact. There was like this freedom to just be around people, and you like respect their existence, but you don't interact in any way, and it's very liberating. You just take care of what you need to do. But anyway, I spent a lot of time walking, and there's lots of beautiful trails around there, and a loop you can do that's more exercise oriented. And they asked if anybody would be a tour guide at the beginning of the first half. And I offered to do it because I have walked extensively all the trails and I feel very comfortable. So I gave people a tour of the forest and a tour of the road. And in both situations, like when I was touring the forest, one woman said, what does that sign say over there? And I was like, I don't know. I hadn't really noticed it. And it said, warning, you were leaving the IMS trail system. And I was like, I wonder where that trail goes. And then the next day when I was leading them around the exercise loop, I was telling them where this road goes and where this road goes and what this is, because I had walked it many times in the few retreats I'd done before. And when we got to a turn, I was like, and I don't know where that road goes because I haven't walked down it. And I was like, I haven't walked down it. I wonder where that road goes. So over 3 months, of course, I explored, because I'm an adventurer and I'm an explorer. So meditation has a lot to do with exploring internally, exploring responses, exploring what you're feeling, exploring what's going on. But I walked a lot. Many of you know that I walked 600 miles a couple of years ago across Spain with my mother. And that, of course, was a meditation. I was doing lots of mantras while I walked, and just the meditation of what am I walking for, supporting my mother, what that means, like the supporting someone's dreams. And I was with Tony as well, and Tony had retired, so I was also like, I'm giving him this, or helping him or supporting him in whatever these ways, and the difficulties of that. And then what is it for myself? And it is a path of purification. And I like the concept of thinking that we're all pure. We're all pure and just need to release the bullshit that's making us a mess. So the purification is not like you can use the gold ore idea of, smelting and burning off the schmuck, and then you've got pure gold, but just the idea, of cleansing. I don't know. I'm obviously Christian looking or spiritual, religiously looking, and that idea of purification has always been attractive to me. I used to fast for 2 weeks every year before I moved to New York. So, but walking, the point I was making was walking 600 miles across Spain I thought of this 3-month retreat as like a continuation of that Camino, of that pilgrimage, but going inside instead of outside. That being said, my body did not like being still. My mind did not like being still. And instead of just sitting there and freaking out, because what I had done in some of my shorter retreats was when I couldn't just be with the moment-to-moment experience, I would do Qigong. I would do other types of energy balancing, something to keep my mind busy that was a doing. Because doing is much easier than just watching. Just being present without without doing. Yeah, I mean, you can engage, but you don't do in the meditation. Um, Hi, Joe. I may talk about that later. I don't have any plans for that. Florida right now. But I do want to write a book. I'm going to make a video. I need to put that on my notes. I want to make a video about work projects and the fantasy of writing a book and going on retreat somewhere with that concept. Notes. Anyway, so I'm talking about writing or walking. I'm talking about walking. I ended up walking sometimes 10 miles a day, especially when the colors got really beautiful. I would walk for 5 hours from right after lunch until dinner. And I would do there's a practice to the moment-to-moment experience that's referred to as noting, where everything you notice your consciousness being aware of, you just put a label on it. And so when walking, I would feel the muscles in the legs being used. I would feel the breathing. I would notice the hearing of the leaves, the wind in the trees, notice the seeing of the light. Songs would come up, I would sing. I would notice the hearing of my voice, notice the singing, notice the breathing. And sometimes I'd just walk and just release and relax and walk. And I explored many, many, many places. And this was very sensually satisfying. And of course I would find places that were remote and nobody could see me. And there were places where the trees were clear, like on the side of a hill where these beautiful rocks were that I found, and another place that was surrounded by ferns. Obviously there were some deer beds. I didn't get any ticks. And I would lay naked in the sun because that's one of my great joys. So I was getting some physical pleasure without it having to be sexual, and sensual pleasure from the seeing and the hearing, while still relating to the not engaging in erotic activity. And my main commitment that I had made with that, because I, again, wasn't going to try to hold myself to something. They say this is training, it's not a commandment. And I was trying not to hold myself to something unrealistic. Because they also, one of the things they talk about in relationship to karma is that whatever you do is what you're going to do. So if you have a life of having had lots of sex, or having whatever it is, like if you read a lot of books, or if you go for a lot of walks, then you're going to have a life of having a lot of sex and going for a lot of walks and reading a lot of books. Like whatever you do with your time is what you're going to do with your time. So if you condition yourself to watch a lot of television, then what you're going to do is watch a lot of television. Or if you condition yourself to masturbate a lot, that's what you're going to do. You know what I mean? So I was trying to respect the law, but mainly it's about not harming. So not harming the self and not harming other people. So I was trying to mainly be sure I wasn't involving anyone else in my erotic exploits when that happened. And sometimes that'd just be like doing yoga, and just come with no stimulation, just doing yoga. But sometimes I would lay naked in the sun, and there would be other things. But that's not mainly what I'm talking about. What I'm mainly talking about is that since I've gotten out of the retreat and that has been lifted, it's just been more of a reflection. Like, what's the point? And what's the point of the sensual pleasure? How much are you appreciating it? How much are you, what are you doing with it? What's it doing for you? Is it harming you? Is it harming other people? So there's been a lot of that reflection. And again, this friend I stayed with, and this is mainly the reason I wanted to make this video today. This friend that I stayed with, I wasn't looking at the internet. I was trying to not look at the internet as much as possible. I was checking in Facebook and looking at my emails. And of course, I have so many emails and all my friends on Facebook that I haven't looked at what they've been doing for the last 3 months. So I was just trying not to spend that much time on it and being present with my friend. Then this other friend picked me up, who's somebody I've known on and off for 10 years. I mean, I don't know him really, really well, but we've known of each other for 10 years. We've been Facebook friends. I've given him massages, and he's invited me out here many, many times. So right now I'm in Cape Cod. And it's really, really pretty. And this is not a part of the kind of reality that I've lived in. Like, I grew up in Indiana, and I didn't grow up near the ocean or the Cape or beautiful marshy things like this. Indiana was commercial agriculture, and although I have traveled around the world a lot, I've never lived in an environment like this. And this summer I stayed with somebody who I know through, well, I've just known for years on and off, and he invited me to his house between 2 retreats, and he had a house on a lake. And those are 2 things that You know, you talk about things you want in your life or bucket lists or something on a material plane. I would love to live in a house by the sea, and a house by a lake, and a house by a river. Houses right by water that you can see out the window. Yeah, it's a nice view. Marshland. Tides are low right now, so it's mud flats. But also, you know, so this guy I'm staying with, he's more on the daddy spectrum than the fellow I was staying with in Central Mass. And again, there's a very nice, cuddly, like immediate, easy physicality. And that's been very nice. Like we slept together the first night, but I don't sleep very well with other people, so but still we just walk around and we're not doing much. Yesterday we went to a Russian steam bath though, which is kind of get to where this is going. I've been meditating for an hour in a day. Yesterday we went to a Russian steam bath because Tony, my relationship with Tony is very sensual. We go to lots of spas, spa castle, you know, Korean spas, and I sometimes go to the Russian Turkish bath. I haven't been enjoying like specifically sex-oriented places like bathhouses for years. Since my friend Leo got sick, I just lost interest in it. And European bathhouses really ruined me for bathhouses in America when it comes to like sex spaces and like sex parties isn't really, it's not like, it's weird that I've had a lot of sex in my life and I'm obviously somebody who's a proponent of go have sex if you want to have sex and make it good. But sex just for sex, I'm kind of getting to that point in my life where I'm like, well, I've done that enough. And so I've been really enjoying these spa environments because although there can be some flirting and some cruising, it's mostly you're just like in a room hanging out with naked men and you don't know who's gay or not. And it's not about sex. It's about being in your body and making yourself feel good. But during the retreat, I thought many times because of my relationship with desire, because I can spend hours looking at the internet at pictures of men I find sexy. And when I go to places like these spas, I look, yes, it's very understood. So a lot of us can relate to this relationship with the computers now that they have lots of infinite images of objects we desire, be it things to buy or eat or couple with. But I was really interested during the retreat what it would be like if I practiced this moment-to-moment awareness, not just walking, not just sitting, but in a space of desire. Because it is something I've noticed many times throughout my life that going into like a bathhouse, I feel the hunger and desire that's just ambient. And at various points in my life, I've embodied that thinking it was a good experience. Like I want to get on that roller coaster and go for the ride. But it's really easy to get lost in. And it's fun to get lost. But as anyone who's ever been lost knows, there's a point when you don't want to be lost anymore. And if you don't know how to get unlost, then that's just irritating. It's frightening and wastes a lot of time. So, you know, I'm being very careful with indulging in desires since I got out of the retreat because it's so easy to get lost in desires. So we're at this Russian bathhouse that's not a gay place. It's, you know, they specifically have signs, no lewd activity. And there weren't that many people there, but there were a few bear kings, I would say. You know, my friend I'm staying here with is cute. But there are certain types of men that just make me lose my mind. And again, in an objectifying way, not necessarily in a, like anything about them. It's superficial. But like there were a couple guys there that were like 6'4" and probably 350 pounds or something. And one of them was absolutely covered in like thick fur everywhere, which I'm just like. So I was sitting there watching the desire. And when I go to the Russian bath in the Lower East Side, there's always a lot of people like jerking off, and I just thought, like, you know, the people who work there don't want you doing that, so they're always stopping you, and I just don't, furtive sex, who needs it? I don't care, I don't want it. So I always ask people if I can massage them, because if there's people I desire and I look at and I'm like, I want to touch you. It's not about orgasm or anything like that, just touching. So sometimes I've given like 20 massage, or touched 20 men, like given 20 massages when I go to the Russian bath on the Lower East Side. And like spend hours doing it. I get really tired, but it's great. It's so fun because you get to talk to them. People, they might be straight, they might be gay, who knows? Some of them are obviously gay, some of them are not. And you just, I massage them with my hands, my elbows, work on their neck and back and shoulders, and just talk with them or not talk with them and just feel them, just connect on a body level. And that's what I was kind of hoping for. That was my expectation, and none of that happened. So I just got to sit with that unmet desire. And even my friend that I was there with, I said, well, can I massage you? Thinking that we've done a little bit of massage back and forth while I've been here, but thinking that he would be totally open to that and it would get the ball rolling. He was like, no, not right now, maybe later. Never happened. And one of the Bear Kings, who was gay, whereas the other one wasn't, I sussed out. I asked if I could massage him, and he was like, no, And maybe that's the New England energy. I've never spent a lot of time on it. More uptight. So I came home, and my friend and I cuddled a little bit, but I'm going to sleep in this other bed because I didn't really sleep super well last night. And he was like, okay. So when he left, I found myself looking at Growler, and then Tumblr, and then I was all horny. And I was like, but I don't want to do this. I had this awareness that I was like, I don't want to do this. But I wasted an hour and a half doing that. Maybe an hour, I don't know. I don't really know how much time, but it was more time than I really should have. I could have been sleeping. Or meditating. And then I was like, well, let me look at Facebook. Let me get my mind off of what it's on. And I just thought I'd look at what some of my friends were doing while I was away. And Tony and Jorge, I had checked in on. I got my phone out 3 times for short periods of time. And Tony and Jorge, I had checked in on every time I had, just because they're my people I spend, I think, the majority of my time with. So I looked at them, just what they were doing. And I basically knew, because I know them very well, so I know what they do. But some of my other friends that I spend a lot of time with in other circumstances, I would say, the people I spend a lot of time with in other circumstances, I don't know, I decided to look at one of his Facebook profiles, and he's a very different person than Tony and Jorge. And there's more complication emotionally because of past stuff that perceived, hurt or whatever. There was some, anyway, complications from stuff over the last year. And I looked at pictures, and it was interesting to kind of feel what that triggered off in me. And it was hitting on these desire things and the complications of desire and reflecting that, because part of that whole sensual world of let's just, hey, feel good and be in joy and pleasure, and couldn't everything just be pleasure all the time? Sorry, it's not pleasure all the time. And seeing pictures of him and people I know being happy together and feeling bad that I wasn't there, but also feeling like I don't belong, which is the way I always feel, which is just something you think and feel. It's not really true or not true. It's just something you think and feel. Hi, guy. But I was reflecting on that. But then he, was very eloquent and wrote this great thing about Trump and stuff, and America and people and family. And I think there was a really nice phrasing in there about that the people who raised you to be loving and not bigoted and not hateful, just because they voted for Trump doesn't mean they are going against those teachings, doesn't mean that they are bigoted and hateful. They maybe voted for him for other reasons and just ignored those because they didn't seem like a big deal. Which is part of what I was trying to talk about, is that there's some hateful things that just are normal, so they don't even seem like a big deal and they don't look like hate. But in reading that, which what he wrote was compassionate and intelligent and articulate, I then read the comments, which is, always a bad idea on anything on the internet, really, to read the comments. But when you're looking at friends, it sometimes seems like it'd be less dangerous. And there were a lot of people that were saying crazy, fucked up, angsty shit in the comments, even though he's a friend of mine and the people he knows are not people that are like that generally, that, but there's family and that's other doorways. And no, he wasn't. I'm not. But again, we have to consider that we're all humans, and using and theming doesn't make anything better. It has to be compassion and understanding. It's the only way to transform the ignorance and hate. But it really spiraled me off reading these weird, hateful utterances that's one of somebody, I don't know who it was, in his thing, and him trying to deal with it in a level-headed way and seeing people getting triggered in this conversation. You know, it was like 27 comments with some branches of 17 comments inside of it. So it made me so agitated. And at this point, it's getting to be like 1:30 in the morning. You know, I'm getting stuck in a computer loop, which happens to me a lot. I'm looking at Facebook. I'm looking at men in various situations, and I'm noticing these different layers of desire, of like wanting people to be at peace, wanting things to be okay, wanting me to be okay, wanting to have the perfect partner. And then I started to notice that I'm staying here with this guy that I've had this nice, peaceful, calm, uncontrolling, unpossessive physical relationship with, and the guy that I was visiting, a similar but very different, but similar in those ways, physical intimacy. And that I was like, wow, looking at the computer, looking at objects of desire, looking at even Facebook, where you're looking at friends of yours that you're not with and desiring to be with them, or looking in the past and wishing you could be with them, or looking at current events that are causing angst and wishing you could make it all better somehow, or make it, or not even have to deal with how complex and horrible it may or may not be, but you're not there right now, you know? That's the thing that's been really frustrating. So when I woke up this morning, I woke up late. I didn't, I've been waking up at like 5 a.m. for the last 3 months, and I woke up at 7 this morning because I didn't go to sleep till almost 3. And we talked with a friend of his who comes by and has coffee with him every morning. And then I sat and meditated, and it was amazing with all the agitation from being in the Russian bathhouse and looking at objects of desire on the screen, sexual desire, and looking at objects of desire, friends, community, events, and all that longing and all that angst and all the togetherness and separation, feeling all that agitation, sitting down and just feeling it swirling around me in various layers, like waves of like color and light and heat and irritation, going throughout my whole, I don't know what you call aura or subtle body, running up and down my spine and just sitting, rolling back into it. And my aunt kept coming up because the first one of these talks I did this blanket statement about how people are so ignorant in the Midwest and hateful. I think it wasn't about being ignorant, it was about hateful. I mean, but the thing is, we're all ignorant and hateful and greedy, just in different ways. So running errands, but saying hello. I like Jorge walking down the street, watching this on his phone. Jorge, don't look at your phone while you're walking. Love you. And anyway, feeling all this agitation from all this desire for things that I couldn't do anything with. Like I installed Growler on my phone after getting out here to the Cape, just to kind of see what was around, and because I have a habit of looking at it. But I was very clear that I was like, I don't want to hook up with anybody. That's not the intention. But it's been so interesting with that clear intention of like, I don't want to hook up with anybody. I'm just chilling out. And just feeling the constant, looking at it. And then people sending pictures and people saying what they want and what do you want, and playing into the fetish games or the ruts we get into or the loops we get into. And just feeling how agitating it was. One of the lines that was caught in my head repeatedly during the retreat is, and actually for most of my life, in all fairness, is a Morrissey line from a Smiths song: a double bed and a stalwart lover for sure, these are the riches of the poor. That if you can just be content with what you have, and especially if you have a cozy enough place to live and someone who's there with you to share the ups and downs and the cuddling, it doesn't really matter if they're the hottest thing on the planet or know how to knock your socks off. It's better than wanting. Being content with what you have, it's an art and it's a blessing. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today, was just reflecting on that like seeing how agitating it is, like really feeling after coming out of this space of total withdrawal, total commitment to a type of isolation. And even though I broke my commitment to non-erotic behavior in ways of myself, none of it was about fantasizing or longing or desiring other people. I mean, actually, there was some of that, but I wasn't feeding it. I was just letting it come up. That was really interesting. The people that I thought of and how that felt. And some of them are people that I see regularly. I mean, kind of, and have a type of love for, even though they might have voted for Trump. No, I know they did. My Orthodox Jewish friends. And feeling that, and the difference between feeding desire and not feeding desire. Because like sitting in a Russian bathhouse and not being able to touch anyone and wanting to repeatedly, I lost consciousness. I lost awareness that I was desiring and feeding desire. The object was too attractive. And looking at Growler and looking at Tumblr, the endless Tumblr porn, not understanding that that's what I was doing while I was doing it. And it was like this 3-hour loop that I got stuck in, or however many hours I was looking at my phone. I really don't know. It might have been 5. I mean, really, I sometimes will, like, throughout living in New York, since I've had an iPhone, I'll sometimes get stuck in these things. Actually, no, it happens on the computer as well. Where I'll be like doing something. I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden it's dawn and I haven't slept. And I've been just like researching music and movies and inland seas and porn and music and histories, and it's just these loops. Looking at the Facebook, looking at the YouTubes, looking at the porn, looking at the Facebook, looking at the Wikipedia, looking at the YouTubes, looking at the porn, and it just goes in these loops of desire for things that we don't have and can't have. And that's kind of one of the worst things about these screens, is that you can't actually have anything in them. They're just these windows into things you can't have. And you might be able to have them tomorrow or in 10 minutes or 3 days, Amazon Direct or whatever. But you can't have them now. Now is the only thing that's actually happening. Oh, that's really cool, Michael. Is that something you chose to do? This guy named Michael Honios, I don't know how to say his last name. He says that he's extremely sensual, but he has no sexual activities in 9 years. So did you choose to be celibate, or was it something that happened, either physical or chemical, or just that you just had a paradigm shift? But yeah, I've talked to people who have just kind of gone into periods of celibacy, and I remember I used to think that was terrible, just to not have sex anymore. But I understand the type of peace that it can bring to just be like, and I say that to some people. I remember when my friend Leo was dying, and he was like, well, I want to go to the bathhouse. And I'm like, dude, you've had enough sex. You can stop. You've had enough. And I say that to myself all the time. Like, I mean, I've had good sex. I've had a lot of it. I've had enough. I don't need to keep doing it. I've had the experience. But there's habit and conditioning. So what it takes to let that go, and the freedom, the coolness it brings. Yes, you chose this. Well, it'd be an interesting conversation, Michael. Maybe you and I can have an interview. Oh, that's an idea that I had. I mean, for those of you who are watching now or end up watching this later, and Michael, you specifically, is that I had this idea that it'd be fun to make, like, to do it when I get home, when I can use my laptop and do a screen recording of having like Skype or FaceTime conversations with people, and interview. So like have them interview me, or I could interview them, but basically like a conversation, and then publish it. It's one of those of us who love Rumi. Like, there's this Rumi bit that Coleman Barks turned into a poem called Constant Conversation, and it's one of the ways that I've always really resonated with spirituality, is that being alive, being caught in duality, believing I'm I and you are you, and we're separate, and I'm separate from the sun and I'm separate from the sky. So how are you spiritually engaging? You're in constant conversation, making love, whatever the conversation comes across, you're dancing with, you're feeding, you're being fed by. But it's a conversation, and I'm a talkative one, so I like the idea of a constant conversation. And so turning these videos also into this idea of, and I'll probably make a separate video about this, this and the writing projects idea, which, because I mentioned it twice in this, I'll just say it really quickly, is I'm having Jorge is helping me transcribe the journal I wrote during this retreat, because I checked my phone and I had a paper journal, and I didn't intend to journal, but I ended up journaling the whole time. I just thought I'd be using it to make notes, but I filled the whole thing because that's the way I am. I've been journaling since I was 14, so conditioning, right? So I'm gonna, either calling Jorge or sitting with him in person. I'm gonna read it and he's gonna type it all out, so it'll be digitized. But I have like 4 or 5 other paper journals from my past that I want to do this with as well. So I'm just putting out this open call. And again, I'm going to make another video about this, but if you're here and you're hearing this, or you end up watching this video and hearing this and you're interested in this, I can pay $13.33 an hour through Venmo or Google or PayPal or Facebook Messenger. Yeah. Animal. There's nothing wrong with it, but you can let it go and move beyond it. But I like being an animal, obviously. Anyway, so the writing thing, yeah, I could pay, but I could also do trades like teaching Qigong or yoga or meditation or life coachy kind of things, counseling type stuff. Or massage, if you're in or able to come to the New York area. Instead of paying, I can trade massage for building up a certain amount. I figured it would be like, if you did what would be the equivalent of $200 of work for me, then I would give you an hour and a half. Well, Lance, yes, and if you just want to donate your time and be generous, that's another talk I want to give, is generosity. Then that's fine too, because it's an interesting way, as long as you're a good typer. Hi, Brian. I thought about you many times. I was talking about sensual desire this whole time. Am I doing that publicly? Oh. Actually, when I watch the videos back, it doesn't show as they log on. So when I say hi to you guys, like, it doesn't show to other people, I guess, who it is I'm saying hi to. So you're still, oh, now you've commented, so now you're public. Brian, you're a terrible lust object for me. All right, but enough of this. I'm going to eat some lunch. Talking about sensual desire, it's time to put the food in the animal. Feed the animal the food. So again, oh yes, I'm speaking. The retreat is over. I'm talking about everything, because it's good to talk. I'm doing little discourses on. I'm not an enlightened being, and I'm not the Buddha. I'm not totally awake, but I'm processing my experience through talking, and because that's what I do. So yeah, I pretty much said everything I want to say today. It's nice to see you, Brian, and thank you, everybody, and Michael, and all of you and Jorge who chimed in. Thank you for all of you who said hello, and love to all of you. And practice having an open heart and being compassionate and patient. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in comments here or message me, and I will address as I can. And if anybody wants to do an interview or transcribing, also let me know about that. Enjoy your beautiful Thursday.